Mr. Amis?
Yeah.
Hi. Sorry, this is Ricardo Stagliano again.
Okay. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
I can't hear a word you're saying. Let me put it on speaker. Just a sec.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you get it on speaker?
Not very loud, but still I can hear you. Okay.
It's on speaker.
Oh,
Wait, no, it's not. Hold on. What?
hello?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm sorry for this, but everything that could go wrong went wrong. I don't know. I mean, logistically wise, I kept making the same number again and again for the last 1 hour, but with no luck.
Yeah, because it's 3 o'clock here. Never mind. Ask away.
Okay. Okay. I would want to bring the topic, I mean, from the US to the UK. I very much appreciate your books to start with. I think that the definition that someone says about Larkin of being mnemogenic applies to many of the things that you've written. Once said that, I mean, I would start from your fascination with Republicans. You write wonderful things about. I mean,
My fascination with what?
no, with Republican characters like Rick Perry, Mitt Romney, and
Right.
to finish with Trump. I mean, you write wonderful, I mean, very nasty but wonderful things about them. Why do you think that the Democratic aren't such a good character to write about?
Trump.
No, the Democratic. Why aren't you interested in the Democrats and much more in the Republicans?
Well, simply because the Democrats are sane. They're not crazy. They're committed to governing, and they get on with it. And that's rather a dull business. But Republicans are like a crowd of eccentrics. So much more interesting to write about.
Yeah.
Trouble is, you like to write about bad things.
Yeah.
And that's just an old trap of literature. It's like with literature itself. There are very few memorable good characters. But all the crazy and stupid and aggressive characters write a very natural subject for literature. The French
Monderland.
writer,
Yeah.
the French writer and critic Henri de Montalon said a great thing, a very true thing, that happiness and goodness write white.
Yeah.
The words don't show up on the page, but with depressing and destructive people, the words write black. They do show up on the page.
Yeah. And in particular, you write memorable things about Trump. And even if he wasn't yet elected, you talk about his cognitive decline in a way. I mean, according to you, there's a Trump 1 and the Trump 2. I mean, and the second one is worse than the first one. How did you get that impression?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Could you speak more slowly?
Yes, sorry. You write very memorable things about Trump in particular. And what you noticed is that there has been a cognitive decline in him. I mean, there's a kind of Trump 1 and Trump 2. And unfortunately, the second one is worse than the first one. Where did you get that impression?
Well, it's actually been very much sharpened in the last couple of weeks. Did you see him trying to say the word origins on TV?
No, no.
Well, Google it
Yeah,
on
I will do it. Yeah.
YouTube. I mean, he wanted to talk about the origins of the Mueller investigation.
Yeah.
And he said on TV, he said, I think people should look into the oranges of the, Netanya. The oranges of the investigation. And then he tried again. He said, the oranges. And then he said how it all started, the beginnings. Then he went into a rant about how it was all a conspiracy against him. And then his confidence lifted a bit, and he thought he'd have another go at saying origins. And he said that they should go back to the oranges. And a look of complete panic came over his face. In fact, it was very surprising and shocking because I found myself feeling sorry for him. And I thought I never would. But he looked like a child who had some terrible disappointment. And then he said he tried oranges, and then he said the beginnings. He gave up on origins and just filled in for the listener that he meant the beginnings. And what's amazing is that happened last week, I think. The late night comedians had a great time with it, but there's been practically nothing in the mainstream press. And one or two news programs did have experts on Alzheimer's and so on, but they were very cautious in what they said. And there seems to be a kind of curtain has come down on that subject. But anyone watching that would think, Jesus Christ, the president is nuts and he's senile.
Yeah.
But so he's definitely well into Trump too now. And it might get even more alarming. So we'll see. But there's been a lot of talk about how he's moved beyond satire and all that. I think complete, just nonsense. I do think that it's very difficult to satirize someone who's still there. I mean, if Trump was in the past now, you could satirize him. But he's not. He's still there, and he's got another year and a half in power. Yeah. And that's why you can't write about him yet. I mean, he has to be. It's what we call a hostage to fortune. To
a
laugh
hostage
at
to
some hostage to fortune.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't satirize someone who may yet do something really terrible.
Yeah.
Because it's not really funny.
Yeah.
So I think, as with the great satirists, always wrote about things that were over.
Yeah.
Including, Swift and Jonathan Swift and the Irish famine, Dickens and imprisonment for debt. Many years after it had been solved or abolished, then you can write about it, but not while it's going on. But the idea that he's beyond satire is pathetic. I mean, satire is big enough to take care of itself, and the idea that Trump resists satire, no, he doesn't. He's as open to ridicule as anyone on earth. So it's really just a question of holding back until he's in the past, and then what a relief that will be.
But when you think that he might do something terrible, what are you thinking about in particular?
What might he do that's terrible?
Yeah.
Well, he might start a war. He might. He's already killed thousands of people.
Yeah.
Sort of just by the way, just his policies have resulted in thousands of deaths. And he might, out of desperation and senility, he might do something that we can't even anticipate.
Some other great reportage and essays that you've done inquire different aspects of the American life. I'm thinking about Las Vegas, or
You're thinking about what?
the Las Vegas reportage.
Yeah, right.
And the porno one, in which there is a guy who's called like me, but it's not my relative, which is John Stagliano. And then about Travolta. Do you wanna go one by one about why did you choose those places, Las Vegas to start with?
Just out of curiosity. I'd never been to Las Vegas until I went, and that is a city that has been almost flattened by the number of writers who satirized it or just about it. And I was stimulated by the possibility of saying some things that hadn't been said before. So it's always, to take on an iconic target like that is always fascinating.
And what about the porno story? I mean, about the San Fernando Valley. What did you find out that you didn't expect?
Well, it was all pretty surprising to me. How well, cruel it is, how misogynistic it is, and how, as in many things in America, how it's all dictated by money, and they'll do whatever they do to follow the market, to interpret the market and follow it. Right up to the limits of legality. And it was interesting to see them doing that, and also to I felt a lot of sympathy with the performers, because it's such a degrading business, and I wanted to put a human face on those people that are usually just having sex together, and I wanted to see to what extent still human and sympathetic, and they were, of course.
Yeah. There was something, sorry to interrupt you, but there was something that you said about the porn industry that reminded me of a thing that another great writer wrote. I'm talking about David Foster Wallace, and he said in a similar article, he said that it's a place in which irony has been banned. There's no irony whatsoever. That's what you say as well. Can you speak a little bit more? I mean, because you mean that if you make a laugh, the castle goes down, tumble.
Well, that title, "Pussies Are Bullshit," I thought that was incredibly funny, and they don't think it's funny because there are some things that some areas of life that if you admit irony, if you let irony in, then the whole thing sort of falls apart.
Yeah.
And so of course, they can't. Foster Wallace is quite right. You have to just pretend that irony doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's very striking that it's all changed now, and you don't have porno films pretending to be films, with storylines. And now it's just all sex, but it's all gonzo, as they say.
Yeah.
But when they do, and they frequently used to have sort of comedies about the porn industry, and you never watched anything so incredibly unfunny. I mean, I think that's what they have in common. The girl who took me around, Chloe.
Yeah.
She was all there. She had a sense of humor and sense of irony, but none of the others do. I mean, it's as if you need to have no sense of humor. Otherwise, if you had a sense of humor, you wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And it's as Clive James, I quote him elsewhere, saying that a sense of humor and common sense are really the same thing, moving at different speeds.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And a sense of humor is just common sense dancing. Very true. And he says the people who lack a sense of humor shouldn't be trusted with anything. They're sort of idiots.
Yeah,
I mean, never give a humorless person a letter to post or anything like that. They'd fuck it up. They just couldn't manage it. They're like dyslexics. The whole part of them that's missing. That was very striking in the porno world.
I couldn't agree more about the lack of irony as a distinctive sign of idiocy.
Yeah.
And my favorite story was the one about Travolta. I mean, I liked all of them, but the Travolta one was incredible. And why did you feel attracted to this to tell the story of a guy who was dead and then resuscitated and then maybe is going to be dead again? I mean, professionally speaking.
You mean John Travolta?
Yeah, John Travolta. Yeah.
No, just because I wanted to spend some time with the movie star. And I spent time with movie stars, and they're always crazy. They're not crazy when they start being movie stars, but after a couple of years of it, they're crazy. It's egotism on a screen that is 50 feet by 50 feet, and that's what they become.
Yeah.
Although, and I'd always suspected that Travolta wasn't crazy, and he was extremely nice and very courteous and thoughtful and considerate and generous with his time. And we had 3 dinners together, just the two of us. Really a lot of time.
Yeah.
And he never made me feel I was with a crazy person for a single second. But it's certainly true that he lacks some sort of judgment about the roles he picks. And so that in itself was interesting and horrifying to see how his career's unraveled yet again. I mean, I think he is a really good actor. He's got such concentration. And concentration is what it's being an actor comes down to in the end. Is just being able to control your responses to a inch perfect accuracy.
Yeah.
And not what Daniel Day-Lewis has.
Yeah.
Supremely. That you see a not very good actor like Keanu Reeves in I'm thinking of Dracula.
Okay. Yeah.
And there he is with his voice leaping all over the place. He can't even do an English accent. It sort of swerves and swoops and slides all over the place. And then you compare him to Gary Oldman, who plays Dracula. And it's such a difference. I mean, old Gary Oldman trains about 10% of his concentration on doing the voice. And it's a wonderful voice too. Yeah. But he's mastered that. And so it's what he's concentrating on are his hand gestures and his eyes and his face. And that's what I mean by concentration. You can sort of divide it up. You have a quarter of it is on the voice, a quarter of it is on the how you walk, how you move, and that makes you respected as an art.
Yeah. The last question on the American part of the interview about Updike. You interview him while he was making some medical test, and that's an occasion for you to talk about the crazy health system that Americans have. By living in the U.S. for since 7 years now,
8
years. Yeah. How did you upgrade your judgment about the health system in America?
I updated it by going to hospital for 2 nights, and I've had I'm in my 60s, late 60s, so I've had various experiences with the health system, and it's absolutely it's awful. It's intimidating, frightening, depressing. And I'm sure it's one of the reasons why the American life expectancy is much lower than Europe.
Yeah.
That it's because it's for profit.
Yeah.
This is a recurring theme in American life: is that money is in all sorts of places where it shouldn't be. Education, etc. I mean, there's no higher level of American life that isn't entirely dominated by money. I always knew that, but every time you go, even if you go just to have your ears cleaned, de-waxed, it's a much more depressing routine. And if you have to fill out 8 pages of forms just to get to the next stage, and it's a disaster, as everyone knows.
Yeah.
American healthcare is 36th in the world in efficiency.
Yeah.
And the only thing it's number 1 at is expense.
Yeah.
Expense for the government and expense for the citizen, hugely higher than anywhere else. And
but
it's just the American superstition about government. and
exactly.
nationalization, and but they, Christ, they stick with it. Long before it's clear to everyone that it's a messy and inhumane system.
Yeah, because in fact, Updike replies to you that it would be un-American not to be able to choose his own doctor and so on and so forth. I mean, so he confirmed in his greatness still, he confirmed the fact that also for him, it was important to be able to choose, not to have someone to choose for you, which is unbelievable, no? For the reason.
Yeah, and I didn't say to him when he said that would be un-American.
Yeah.
I say, well, why don't you go un-American on this particular subject? Because the American way of doing it is no good. But there's a part of Updike that is like Rabbit in those books, in the four Rabbit books. Yeah. He's proud. He's got quite a lot of redneck in him, and he's proud of it, and he sort of sticks with it. And that's very American too. It's as if you choose to be obtuse. You choose not to see the point. People wonder why Americans keep voting for people who don't serve their own interests. Everyone knew really that Trump didn't care about the kind of people who adore him most. Look at his record. He's a very disreputable and dishonest businessman with no egalitarian values at all. Doesn't care about the common man. He pretends to, but he doesn't, obviously. Yeah. But people, particularly Americans, they vote for their values, not for their interests. And it is, as everyone keeps saying, it is a tribal matter. And as long as Trump represents the undereducated, which he certainly is, that's his one campaign promise, is that he isn't educated and doesn't read and doesn't care about any of that at all. But they identify with him, and that 35% is always going to be there to vote for him. I think the only way he could lose that kind of basic support is if he said something like, they don't care if they find a few more porn stars or Playboy models or even swindles and lies. They don't mind that. That's been the most revealing thing about Trump's rise, is that all those things that Republicans pretended to care about and probably thought they sincerely cared about, they don't care about. The evangelicals vote for Trump, and he's clearly the most dissolute and promiscuous character that's ever been in the White House.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't mind. The religious people like him. How's that,
Yeah. It's really mysterious.
And they don't care about the deficit either. They've been going on in this righteous way about the deficit, and they don't care about that either.
Let me please pose you a couple of questions on UK as well. But since you quoted we talked about Updike, at a certain point in the book, you quote a reply that once you gave to a reader, and he was asking you for your after Saul Bellow died. He asked what were your favorite living writers, and you said Updike, Philip Roth, and then the third one was let me see, I don't find it.
Don DeLillo.
Don DeLillo, exactly, which I had the chance to interview a couple of years ago. Um, Unfortunately, this list needs to be updated because the first two passed away. What are your three favorite living writers now?
Well, I have to confess that I don't read living writers much. Not I read the dead, and so well, Don DeLillo is still with us, and
Yeah.
Alas, Foster Wallace is no longer with us. But you don't expect me to read a sensational new novel by some 25-year-old.
No.
But not. But for a sensible reason, as well as for reasons of idleness and incuriosity. But the 25-year-old novelist is of no interest to me until his work has stood the test of time.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to follow him until he's got a body of work or her a body of work that has lasted.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I love various short story writers. I think and novelists. I very much admire Richard Ford, Alice Munro.
Yes.
Laurie Moore. I don't know if she's translated into Italian. But you're safer with dead people, because if they've done their body of work, and if they're still being read, it's because there's some good.
Yeah. This has a lot to do with the title of the book itself, The Rub of Time, which means two things. The things that you just said, judge time, and there's also another meaning of it. I mean, which has got to do with the effect that time has on the writer himself. Is that correct?
Perfectly true. And there are various strains on the writer as he or she gets older. And I'm experiencing that now up to a point where it's difficult. I mean, many writers, very sensibly, I think, write short when they get older.
Yeah.
Chekhov said, everything I read today, he says, towards the end of his life, everything I read seems to be not short enough. And that's true in itself. But as you get older, it's sensible to stay short, because you there are 10,000 things you have to keep in your mind when you're writing a long novel.
Yeah.
And of course, that's what I'm doing at the moment, very unwisely. So also, I mean, things that are just entailed by medical science, like your vocabulary starts to shrink beyond a certain age. It doesn't go on getting bigger. It sort of, there's a curve, and then you just read the older novelists, and that's Updike, for instance. That's My Father's Tears and other stories. Really sort of amateurish mistakes caused by the ear, the writer's ear.
Yeah.
The way they compose a sentence gets less sensitive. And I think Philip Roth, I think, didn't write much of interest
Yeah.
for the last 10 years. But he was dignified. I mean, he wrote short novels until he decided, for various reasons, but having to do with age,
Yeah.
to retire. And I think that's more dignified than going on knowing that what you're writing is nothing like as interesting as what you were writing 20 years ago.
Yeah, that was a very rare move, the one by Philip Roth to retire.
Which one?
The Philip Roth decision to retire is not very frequent, I would say.
No, I think it was. He should have done it a bit earlier. I mean, I'm not trying to be vicious, but it just seems to me that his effectiveness as a writer came to an end quite a while ago.
Yeah. Going to, figuratively speaking, going to the UK, there are a couple of things that I wanted to ask you about UK today. A person with whom you're not nice at all is Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little more? I mean, the accusation you do are very straightforward. It's not cultivated enough. It doesn't possess irony, and probably doesn't understand the nation. Can you elaborate a little more why you are so severe with him?
Well, I don't think I am particularly severe. I think he has very few merits, and he's also his thinking has always been about 40 years out of date or 50 years. I don't think he's had a new thought in his head since he was a young man, which is a very damning thing to say, and it's a damning reality too. He's not at all flexible. He's not adaptable. He can't take in new ideas, and he just sticks to the old ones. And I can't understand how he's let the Labour Party be identified with anti-Semitism. I mean, that's a disgrace.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see it creeping into American life too, political life. Such a cliche that's 4,000 years old and still reappearing in not very new clothes, and it still looks just like it always did. I mean, there are some very weird things about Jewry. I'm a Philo-Semite. I like Jews. I'm married to a Jew.
Yeah.
I think they're 0.3 of the world population, and yet they've won 30% of Nobel Prizes. So with anti-black prejudice, well, anti-Semitism is different in that they attribute magical powers to Jews.
Yeah.
And as Einstein said, it's not inborn, this incredibly high intelligence and application and study. It's cultural.
Yeah.
A Jewish child doesn't impress his parents by being good-looking or a great athlete or a great lover or anything like that kind. He impresses his parents by being a good learner, a good student, a good accumulator of knowledge.
Yeah.
So that explains that. But anti-Semitism is full of these superstitions about how the Jews are going to rule the world. And,
Yeah.
they dominate Wall Street and the bourse, and City of
Newspapers,
London.
yeah.
Yeah,
Newspapers as well, yeah. The media.
yeah,
Yeah.
the media as well. No one thinks that black people are going to take over the world. So it's got this whole other dimension of it, and also the fact that they have money as a matter of course, much more money than anyone else. I don't know how true that is statistically, but that's certainly part of the prejudice.
Yeah.
So,
May I, sorry, may I to interrupt you, but can we, after this, finish about Corbyn? Because on this, I totally agree with you. I mean, it's a disgrace that the let the Labour Party to be identified with rising anti-Semitism. But on the other hand, I mean, is revitalizing, I mean, at least from polls, the Labour Party. I mean, he seriously the Labour Party seriously risk to win the next election. So apparently, I mean, is politically is not doing that bad. Don't you think so?
yeah, well, I think that the Trump thing and the Brexit thing are part of the same movement in that it's a counter-enlightenment.
Yeah.
And the counter-enlightenment is, I think, 250 years old, 300. It goes back to the Enlightenment.
Yeah.
There have always been people who immediately turn against a new orthodoxy. The new orthodoxy in the case of the Enlightenment was faith in reason and progress and humanism. And as soon as that became established, you had people who valued the irrational, the unreasonable, and the humanistic, and the very idea of progress. So that's always been around, it's subterranean.
Yeah.
But every now and then it comes to the surface, and sensible people cease to behave sensibly, and old prejudices are welcomed back into the mainstream.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I was just saying that from a number point, I mean, from speaking on numbers, I mean, the labor is in better health now that it used to be a few years ago, and but still, I mean, I don't I don't want to even try to convince you that maybe you have been a little harsh with Corbyn. I mean, you have good reason to say what you've said. Okay, very last questions. The, a very touching part. I mean, I'm not surprised at all by having read other things by you, but a very touching part is the one you dedicate to Christopher Hitchens, speaking like about him in very kind and much more than kind terms. I mean, he spoke like a genius. He's a human Google and so on and so forth. So the question I wanted to ask is, how on earth is possible that Oxford produced a class like you, Hitchens, Julian Barnes, and Rushdie, just to name a few? There was something special in the university. It was just a chance that so many brilliant people came out from the same university at the same time, approximately the same time. Is there something special?
Yeah. Sheer chance, and even more a matter of chance that we all knew each other early on. But I don't think it was to do with the milieu. I don't think a milieu can produce anything by itself. It's just certain individuals gathering at the same time. So pure chance, as I see
it. But once I've interviewed Salman Rushdie, who told me something that I still remind, saying that at Oxford, in those years, you could be very ferocious. I mean, with arguments. I mean, we could quarrel a lot, even be, um, among friends. But then you weren't never ferocious with people. Is that true in your experience? I mean, do you remember the fight you had in the same way?
Yeah, I do. I I'm I'm I make sure that disagreements, even very strong disagreements, should never affect friendships.
Yeah.
And and the rules of courtesy, and Christopher Hitchens didn't obey these rules much, as you did.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important to just, it's my temperament, I suppose, but not to talk with looseness and hostility about people. You write what you can prove by quotation.
Yeah.
You can expose people by quotation, not by abuse. And so much of all this is temperament. The kind of writer you are is temperament. Even your political affiliations
Yeah.
come from your temperament. And an extremist is a different sort of person to a moderate. And so I believe in incremental change. And a different kind of temperament goes for sudden and violent change. And there's certainly a lot of that in Christopher. Violent change. And I think violence solves nothing. And Hitch was romantic about politics and about everything. And that, he did believe there was a sort of cleansing power in revolutions.
Yeah.
And you can divide people up into those who love revolutions and those who fear revolutions. And I'm said he loved them and I feared them. Although we never had a disagreement that lasted longer than an hour. It was always secondary to the friendship, and I think that's what I would say I still believe.
Yeah, at a certain point in the book, you use a very beautiful image, saying that it was always uh, your friendship was a sky without clouds, or something like that.
It was what?
Yeah, at a certain point in the book, you define the friendship with Hitchens as a sky without clouds.
Yeah.
Which is a great way to put it. Yeah.
People think we had a huge disagreement about Stalin.
Yeah.
Well, we did, but it never, it was just a discussion, not taking things personally, which is what you should try never to do.
Okay, last two questions. Still, even if you sound very kind and you are definitely, I mean, a more, as you've just said, you believe in incremental change, not in revolutionary change. You've been at the center of many polemics in the past, and I wonder where do they come from. I mean, there has been polemics in the media. At a certain point, someone said that you had become Islamophobe, but then you specify that you weren't at all. You were Islamist phobe, which is a completely different thing. And then that you were resentful vis-a-vis of UK. That's why you moved to the US. And then that you didn't stand the hipsters in Brooklyn anymore. I'm just quoting some headlines from newspapers here. According to you, where do these myths come from? I mean, if they are myths, I mean.
Well, I think I think a lot of it is to do with my father and the idea that I didn't work as hard as anyone else to make an impression on the literary world. Um, and I think, of course, you can't defend it. I mean, if you ask them to say, is that it, they would probably deny it and say, no, it's other things. But I think subconsciously that's what they object to. And also the extraordinary fact that that there are no other father-son or two generations of writers that have made any impression. Alexander Dumas, but I forget which one it is. But
I'll find out.
The younger one
Yeah.
was not a serious writer. I mean, he wasn't in the same league as his father. I've written about as many books as my father did, and we have parity. And there's, I don't think there's any other case in any language, father or two generations of equal weight. And I think that's to do with starting very young, which is what I was, when I published my first novel, I was 12 years younger than my father when he published his. But I think if your father or your mother is a writer, then you've got to start very young before you become too self-conscious. Dmitry Nabokov, he gave me a novel of his to read, and it was he's a brilliant translator, and there were, of course, very good things in this novel. But I wanted to say, I didn't, but I wanted to say, in response to his typescript, I said, you're too old, mate. You left it too late. You've got to get in there when you're young and brave and stupid. You can't let it stew, because then every word you write, you'll feel you have 100 people looking over your shoulder and criticizing you. You've got to. I did it out of just instinct, but I'm sure it's to do with that.
Okay. And the very last one is about, in a way, religion. I mean, I've read somewhere that the novel you are finishing, or maybe you've just finished, is what they called autofiction, like Nausgard, in that vein. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I mean, completely different approach.
Okay.
No, and that's a troublesome genre, autofiction. I don't really approve of it. Something in me resists it. It began with D.H. Lawrence.
Yeah.
Dickens doesn't start telling you about what he's been up to or what his friends are up to. Thomas Hardy doesn't go on about that. But Lawrence did. And he is the father of this genre.
Yeah.
But my two main objections to it are that it diminishes your freedom, because you're always worrying about even if they're all dead, the people you're writing about, they've still got children, grandchildren, and the other thing is that it doesn't allow the subconscious to do much. A regular novel, an imagined novel, is A, infinitely free, and B, very dependent on the subconscious to help you, to work with, to solve problems for you, to see it knows more than you do in a strange. And with autofiction, it is just woefully underemployed. subconscious.
Yeah, but
That's my.
the question is, so why, with all these suspect that you have vis-a-vis of this genre, you embark yourself in a in a novel like that?
Well, it's the Mission Impossible. In you're very attracted to things that you think are impossible for you, and sometimes they are. But I felt that writing certain novels that I can't do this, and then it's very, very satisfying when you can. For instance, my novel Time's Arrow, I thought I can't do this, but I did, and it has its readers, and then there's it's a satisfaction when you do something that you thought was impossible. It gives you satisfaction that you didn't go looking for, but you impress yourself when you do it.
Do you still need to impress yourself at this point of your life?
I don't know if I need to, but I'm very pleased when I do. Okay, well, look, it's been very nice talking to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. I mean, I did exactly the number that they gave to me, but unfortunately it was the wrong number. And I'm sorry I kept you waiting. It's very late at night here in Italy. Me, myself, was supposed to have a dinner somewhere, but everything was run avok. Anyway, thanks a lot it was a pleasure to speak with you, and I really appreciate your book. I'll do the best.
I hope we speak again.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Have a good day.
All
Bye
the best.
bye. Bye bye.
Bye bye.